how best to describe the mood, but because it's still a little bit cold, the mood itself could be better described in the later minutes from now. But we know, and what we have seen, as you can be in position to see, even in our background, the deployment is already heavy. For those that are coming from the side of the family court of Makindye, it could be hard to access easily unless if you're a media personality or you're one of those that trek this route every other time. So the deployments and several roadblocks on this very lane as you come to as the court martial, but also it's the same on the other side if you're just moving past the court martial. Today's return is for majorly about three things. There will be mention of cases for Dr. Kizza, Besigye and Hajj, Obeid, Lutale. That's according to the chairman. That's a statement that he made last week as he closed off and remanded Dr. Kizza, Besigye and Obeid, Lutale back to the Luzira prison or maximum prison. But also away from the mention of the cases, before the proceedings could end, State had earlier on asked to amend the charge sheet and also add one more person. We do not know whether amending the charge sheet will mean that there will be more other charges that will be preferred against the two, or even the other individual is part of the two individuals and that he or she will be added onto the charge sheet, because we confirm it was said by the state prosecutor or the UPDF prosecutor that day of the 7th, when Dr. Kizza Besigye was here at the General Court Martial. But also we know that the other things that have to be determined today are the rulings on the challenge of the charge sheet, which the defense termed to be defective, matters to be determined, including the jurisdiction of the cases that are before this court, the jurisdiction of whether the court martial has the powers to try a civilian, Dr. Kizza Besigye. But also, before we could leave that session of court, Dr. Kizza Besigye had told the proceedings, or had told the judges or the committee of the court martial court that the person that had to receive the ruling on several of those matters before the state could seek to prefer and to amend the charge sheet, that at least Aaron Kizza, who was arrested that very day, one of his lawyers was the one to receive the ruling. Now we return today with Aaron Kizza on a sentence of 9 months in prison over issues, professional misconduct and contempt of court. It's uncertain whether we'll be in position to get that ruling, whether court will agree with the defense, the Lord Mayor Arias Lukwago, Martha Karua, we know she's also around, and the other lawyers of Dr. Kizza Besigye and Hajj, Obeid, Lutale, whether they'll be in position to receive that ruling or the ruling has to wait for Aaron Kizza. But also we know that there has been sort of a document, actually we can call it a document that has powers or instructions to the different law firms, including Lukwago, including many other firms, that will have to appeal the judgment or the sentencing of Counsel Aaron Kizza in the court martial, and that was directed to the court martial appeals court. We are uncertain, really a lot of dynamics will have to play out today, whether the matter itself will proceed, whether it will not proceed because of Aaron Kizza's absence, whether actually there will be other things that will have to be determined differently, whether also the court martial appeals court will have a communication by that time for them to start the hearing, if at all it wishes so, the hearing of the appeal against the sentencing of Aaron Kizza, who is a lawyer to Dr. Kizza Besigye. So the things that we return to today are a little bit many, so you can't be clearly sure of what will proceed today in the court martial as it proceeds. But also on those several matters, Simon and Mildred, anybody will want to question or even to find out who could be this other individual that the state seeks to add onto the charge sheet that has Hajj, Obeid, Lutale and Dr. Kizza Besigye as accused or co-accused in the different matters of 4 of a kind that were accused with from the different countries, including Nairobi, including Switzerland, and also including Greece. So a number of things were returned to today, but the environment continues to be the same. We will only be waiting to see what this time round is the reasoning of the defense, whether to receive the ruling on the different things that they contested in the court martial from the start, those things that actually Dr. Kizza Besigye pronounced himself on and Hajj, Obeid, Lutale pronounced himself on in the very court martial, or will be receiving a notification maybe to the court martial of an appeal over the Aaron Kizza sentencing, and maybe that might or might not stop the proceedings in the court martial. So a lot more things we'll look out for today, but certainly the return involves different things. The previous time we were here, many of the supporters of Dr. Kizza Besigye and even members of and members of some of them members of the family of Hajj Obeid Lutale were not able to access the premises of the court-martial because of the different roadblocks that you have to meet along. But also, the previous time we were here, the lawyers met resistance at this very gate that you're able to see here at the court-martial because of what had transpired, the questions of whether actually they had to access or they did not have to access. That's how the different pictures came through of Aaron Kizza and other lawyers trying to seek attention of the soldiers, giving them leeway, asking to be given leeway to be able to access the court-martial because they had a client or two to represent in the very court-martial. So a lot of things will have to take precedent today. It's unclear how the relations or the behavior of the soldiers and the lawyers will be today, whether it will still be forced on who will enter, who does not enter. By the time we left court that day on Tuesday, it was a question actually of whether there are particular lawyers that don't have to access the court-martial or there are those that have to access the court-martial, because the accusations of the lawyers of Dr. Kizza Besigye and Hajj Obeid Lutale of themselves, of there being a list that involves who will have to be arrested, who is being sought not to be part of these very proceedings. The accusation and allegation was that there is a deliberate move to ensure that they do not represent Dr. Kizza Besigye, that he does not get the fair hearing or legal representation that he deserves to receive from the court-martial. But a lot of things are expected to play out. You can't rule out what will be the breaking news of who exactly will be added on the charge sheet, on whether the ruling on the different contestations will have to wait for the 9 months of Kizza Besigye, whether the court-martial appeals court will be sitting in a few days, whether the complaint has already been lodged. All those are different questions that bring a different dynamic to the proceedings of today. Back to you, Mildred and Simon.